Hi everyone, I'm Mia McCormick with Kelby One. We have some really exciting news. Canon has asked us to talk to photographers and get their thoughts on the brand new 7D Mark II. Now, our own Scott Kelby is one of the best known photographers, authors, and instructors in the industry. He had a chance to really work with this camera and get a feel for it and the images that it can deliver. Scott, where do you see this camera fitting in? Like, who would benefit from using it?
Well, I can tell you two groups that will lose their mind over this camera: sports photographers and wildlife photographers. Those are two very, very expensive genres to get into. In fact, in one of my books, I talked about sports photography and had a chapter on sports photography. And I started it, and I'm not making this up, with a picture of a suitcase full of money. And it said, if you want to shoot sports photography, better bring your checkbook. That's the headline on the page. But at the price point of the 7D Mark II, it shatters that barrier. Now all of a sudden, everybody who dreamed of having a camera with this type of performance for wildlife, for sports, those two groups of people are just going to lose their mind, because this, and I know people throw the word game changer around. This seriously is a game changer, because there's never been a camera at this price point with this performance and this quality. So this opens it up to people that never would have had an opportunity to be able to even be in the game, and now they're right there.
So let's talk about that performance, because whether you're shooting your kid's basketball game or you're shooting in a professional arena, the obstacles are really still the same when it comes to sports, right?
There's a couple of things that sports photographers and wildlife photographers, they really, really want. And number one is we want to get close, right? I mean, we really want to get tight in on the action. If there's an animal, we want to get close up. Nobody wants to see this stuff from way far away. Nobody wants the view from the stand. Nobody wants the view from the Jeep. We want to really, really see the emotion. We want to see the impact. We want to see the face. And because this camera is a crop sensor, it is going to bring you closer in than a full frame camera would. And let me just give you an idea how important this is. So take this same lens that's on here. So what we have on here is a 70-200. Take this same lens and put it on a full frame camera. It's a 70-200. You take this and put it on this camera, the 7D Mark II, because it has a 1.6 magnification value. Your 200 really is the equivalent of a 320 millimeter if you were using a full frame. That gets you a lot closer without buying a much, much bigger lens. So I think that's amazing. The second thing that I think is a real big obstacle, quite honestly, is shooting indoors. Okay, so when you're shooting outdoors, whether it's sports or wildlife, you will have very, very fast shutter speed. You'll be able to freeze action no problem. You step inside a gymnasium, you step inside an arena, or worse yet, Friday night under the lights. Oh, the lighting's terrible. And the only way you can get your shutter speed fast enough to freeze the action is to raise your ISO. Up till this point, on a crop sensor camera, if you raise your ISO, it was like turning on a noise generator. Unfortunately, your image just got buried in noise. But I got to shoot this, and let me tell you what, I've never shot a crop sensor DSLR that has better noise performance than the 7D Mark II. In fact, I checked with Canon. This is, of all of the crop sensor cameras Canon's ever made, the one with the best low noise performance, and I think that says wonders. So when you are shooting in those low light situations, you don't have to worry about, oh, I need to crank it up, because a lot of people had to choose. I'm either going to have blurry photos or noisy photos. What if you could have sharp photos and the noise was controllable? That's what you get here. That's a game changer for sports and wildlife photographers.
And I think enthusiasts, they can compare their picture to the pros, and it's like you're always just missing the moment. Right now, there's something to be said for skill level when it comes to pros.
Absolutely.
But the gear has to have something to do with it too.
You know, I always say it's not about the gear, but in this case, it's about the gear. Let me tell you what, because let's just talk about frame rate. It does 10 frames a second. There's nothing more heartbreaking to look through your photos and you see the quarterback with the ball in his hand, and the next frame it's gone. You're just like, where was the shot in between where it's just leaving his fingertips, the shot everybody wants? Because if you have a slow frame rate, you're going to wind up, if your timing isn't dead on, if you're not super skilled, you're going to miss that again and again and again. With 10 frames per second, it's just, listen to that. It's just, you're going to catch stuff that you never caught before. So that's going to give you a huge advantage. I think that is big time. And of course, the ISO performance I talked about earlier, but also the autofocus system in here. Because you know what? You want to be able to have it latch on the subject. Something's moving, animals moving, an athlete's moving. You want it to latch on the subject, catch on it, and not let go. The autofocus system in here is unbelievable. And what's especially cool about it, I think, is that if you have an object or a subject that doesn't have a lot of detail, it does great. If you're in low light, the autofocus does great. It's really an incredibly robust autofocus system. Those three things alone make this kind of unique in its class and its price range for sure.
So sports and wildlife, you're set with this camera.
Oh man, like you have no idea.
But I know that you recently got to take it on a wedding shoot, and the pictures, the images are just gorgeous. How did you feel it performed in that kind of environment?
So here's what's cool about this camera. You know what I found about this, Mia? It will take a picture of anything that you aim it at. So while I know that the wildlife and sports crowd is going to lose their mind over this is a wonderful camera for weddings because you're faced with a lot of the same things. You're in a church. It's low light. You're shooting the reception. You're shooting the flower girl running around when they're getting ready and stuff. You'll have the frames per second. You'll have but you know what? I could talk about all the stuff this has, and it's got all kinds of amazing features and stuff. But you know what? At the end of the day, we just want really, really beautiful pictures. The image quality from this sensor, it's 20.2 megapixels, which is another feature. But at the end, you got to see the images from it. The images from it are just beautiful, and I think they're bright, they're sharp, they're vibrant. I mean, that's what really tells the story of this camera. Yeah, it's got amazing features, but it takes beautiful pictures. For travel, really, really compact. It's also really, really rugged, and I'll talk about that in a second, but pair this with like an 18-200 for travel. Oh, what a sweet pairing, because now you've got one lens that goes from wide angle to zoom. You've got a small, lightweight body, but this body is tough. Now, when Canon built this is actually a magnesium alloy body. They built this body to be really, really tough and to be able to withstand literally like shooting sports and being on the sidelines and being out in the field and doing wildlife and all this kind of stuff. So this body is really, when you use it, you feel like it feels like a pro camera. You know why? Because this is a pro camera. Don't let the price fool you. The quality here is just amazing.
There are a couple of other features. I think that you mentioned specifically the viewfinder and things like that make it a good user experience while you're using it. So while the images are fantastic, your experience using it is a really good one.
Oh, well, you know what it is? I think everybody wants to have everything customized these days. And I never even thought to have my viewfinder customizable, which it is. You can decide which things you want to see, how many points you want to see. You can have even like a digital level appear right inside your viewfinder. You don't realize how much you love that stuff until you do it one time and you're like, I could never go back to the old viewfinder. So it's totally customizable, and I think that's amazing. It also has a built-in intervalometer and a bulb timer. So you used to have to buy an accessory. Everybody had to buy a cable and a whole accessory. Now it's built right in the camera. And also there's so many little features. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, if you're shooting weddings, the shutter is it's just quieter, you know, and it's like that's the kind of thing you want. Not just in weddings, but for sports and for wildlife too. You don't want to disturb any of the animals, and you don't want to bug the players. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I could just go through this like to death. But at the end of the day, the features are amazing. The images are even better.
I can tell you're super excited about this camera.
Thing's wonderful.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. We were also fortunate enough to get the camera in the hands of Adam Jones and Peter Reed Miller, so keep your eyes out for those interviews. Thanks for watching.